What's going on, everybody? Okay, so this week we're going to talk about staffing and standards for front of the house service, which hopefully we can tie back into the things that you've been talking about with theories of service and customer service. So your readings this week came from a great book by the National Restaurant Association's Manage First program. It's actually a human resources management and supervision text, and it's chapter 6. So you have it for your readings. So a few things that I want to pull out of it to make sure you pay careful attention to. It spends some time talking about standards of service, standards of care for guests in the dining room, and it talks about how you actually develop your standard setups for the example it uses standard setups for your lunch service with your table diagrams. So basically what it's telling you to do is create a standardized recipe for the way that you deliver service in front of the house. So whether it's mapping out the dining room, mapping out the tablescapes, all of those things are going to be kind of rolled into what's known as your standard operating procedures or your SOPs. And your SOPs really are what's going to drive some of the things that we will talk about in just a second with the master schedule. Because the master schedule is basically built on your labor dollars, your projections for sales or your forecasted sales, and the level of service that you plan to deliver to your guests. So if you're a quick service restaurant that doesn't spend a lot of time touching each of the tables, or your servers won't spend a lot of time touching the tables, then obviously they can deal with a much larger volume of guests during their service period. But if you have a fine dining restaurant where you need a very fine amount of details connected to taking care of each of the tables. So each guest is going to have a water person that's attached to them and their table. You get into the starred restaurants, the Michelin star restaurants, you're going to have dedicated people that as soon as the water glass picks up off the table, they're on their way to the table to fill it back up again. So obviously their labor costs are going to be substantially larger than that of a quick service, but proportionally the percentage of labor costs or labor dollars probably isn't that much different, because instead of spending $12 for dinner, you're spending $120, so just moving the decimal over. But the big things that we really want to talk about this week is understanding how to create this schedule. So what's going to happen in a second is it's going to cut to a bunch of screenshots, and I'm going to talk you through the assignment. So the concept behind this is that we actually create a master schedule first. So we decide how many servers we need, how many cooks we need. And the example in the text and in your homework, I think there's cashiers and some of those things that you may not actually have in your operation, but your host. And then it goes through and breaks them down based on how much money each of those folks cost, so that you can actually try and figure out the budget, know how much it's going to cost. You actually do the schedule, and then at the very end of this particular assignment, you're going to do a little bit of variance audit on the hours they worked and how much you went over or under on labor for each one of your employees. So it's really not a difficult concept to grasp, but it's a very important concept to grasp. So please take some time to make sure that you're not just filling in the numbers based on what I'm telling you goes in each spot, but that you actually take time to figure out how to do them. This is the example and the assignment for this week. The test number 2 has another one that's very similar to this. Obviously different numbers, different names, different structure, but it's still the same concept. So make sure you grasp how to do it. So it's going to cut over to those now. So hope all is well wherever you are. And here's the lecture on master schedule and crew schedules. See ya. Okay, so the master schedule is the form that shows us when each of our employees are supposed to work, how long they're going to work each day, how many hours each are going to be scheduled, at what rate, and how much we're going to budget for them each day. It will go through each of your positions in your operation, so your server, your cashier attendants, counter attendants, your dishwashers, your cooks, so on and so forth. And then based on that schedule, then we're going to use it to actually convert over to what the crew will know as their schedule. So basically to create the crew schedule. So when we look at the master schedule, it's blocked off by each of the positions as well as the times that each of our employees are going to work. So we look at the first line where it says server number 1. Our server number 1 is supposed to come in at 5 and they work until 10. So we go down to our crew schedule and we put in 5 to 10. 5 to 10 each day, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So 25 hours per week. And then we go up to Meredith. She's supposed to work from 7 to 12. So we go down and we fill in 7 to 12. And then we go all the way across through each of our employees, go back, we grab Liz. She works 10 to 3. So we go 10 to 3, so on and so forth across and down the schedule. And that's virtually how we're going to create the crew schedule. Okay, so the next part of this is completing the audit. So when we look at the report of hours worked, we're going to go through and look at the differences between what was worked and what was actually scheduled. So we go through line by line and determine what the variance in scheduled versus actual are. So in this particular example, we go through and add up the total number of hours, and we see that there's 1 hour difference between what was scheduled and what the actual are. However, because everyone's paid at a slightly different pay rate, we need to go through and calculate the variance in dollars, real dollars as it represented by each employee's pay rate. So we go through each line. Meredith, 4.5, she was supposed to work 5, so that's a negative 0.5. Liz worked an hour over, Taryn worked an hour over, Stacy worked an hour under, John an hour over, and so on and so forth. And we calculate all the way down to the bottom. And then based on each of those variances, we're going to go in and using our pay rates, we're going to calculate what the actual expenditures were for each of those people. So Meredith makes $8 an hour. So it's $8 times 0.5. So that means that there's a variance of $4. However, it's a negative number, so we go back and it's actually negative $4. So we take that $4 and put it into our little table over here. And then we go back and we calculate the next one for Stacy. Actually, it's for Liz, but Liz makes $8 as well. But hers is a half an hour over, so it's $4 on the positive. We go through all of these. Taryn makes $15 an hour, so it's 15 times 0.4. I think you can kind of grasp where we're going with this, but we go through the entire column, and then at the very bottom, you're going to put the total variance in dollars. And that's pretty much the way you complete the audit. So nothing too complicated with this particular project. So good luck with it.